quite a fun intro for 2022. Well, good evening to you, and welcome to the Sandton Times Podcast, episode 65. And if I'm right, it's week 5 of 2022. It's the 1st of February, the first week of February, and here we are again, doing it all for another year. I'm Alex. I'm joined by my ever-competent co-host, Catherine Grunewald in the Mother City. Catherine, how's it going, man?
Hi, Alex. It's so nice to be back on our podcast.
Listen, Catherine, you mentioned February. February is the month of love, 14th of February, Valentine's Day.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, man, here we go again. And relationships, man, become so important, but not just because it's February or whatever. I think relationships have been an important thing for quite some time. And I'm thrilled that we're going to be joined by Paula Quinsee. She's a relationship expert. She's written some books on the subject as well. So it's a chance for us to kind of have a conversation with her and chat about relationships. If you're good
Alex,
at them, if you're bad at them. Oh,
I could be here forever talking to Paula.
All right. Do you want? Otherwise, I'm sure I'll make myself some coffee, and you and Paula can carry on chatting, and then I'll see you guys next week. But Paula Quinsee, good to have you on this podcast.
Welcome.
Hey, Alex. Hey, Catherine. So good to be with you guys tonight.
Likewise. It's great to have you.
Well, it's great to have you on, Paula. Quickly, before we get into any sort of extreme questions and deep, meaningful sort of conversations, what does a relationship expert do?
So my area of expertise is dealing with relationships, both at home and in the workplace, and what people call emotional intelligence, things like conflict management, effective communication skills, how to create psychological safety or emotional safety, how to understand how our upbringing, so our childhood conditioning, influences and shapes us, and how we forge relationships with others. And yes, everybody has baggage.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about the month of love. I mean, this is not just romantic relationships. I mean, this is relationships. This is engaging with other people in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic relationship.
Correct. You know, there's very little difference between personal relationships and professional relationships. The core foundations, the core principles are the same. You need an element of trust. You need an element of respect. You need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to resolve conflict. And if you've got those 4 basic pillars or foundations in place, those are the foundations of a healthy relationship, personal or professional.
So how has all of this changed during COVID-19? I mean, let's maybe start off with the professional and then also look at the romantic, because I think it must be the most stretched time for anybody who was struggling with relationships before. I mean, even if you weren't struggling with relationships before, I mean, it's been very difficult to keep friendships going, never mind romantic relationships, meeting new people. I mean, you're just scared of people in general right now. I mean, I don't know if I'd be running towards any strangers right now. It must have just absolutely turned this whole thing upside down.
Definitely. It certainly has put the spotlight on a lot of relationships, both personally, but then obviously in the workplace as well, with people having to work from home. And so losing that human connection, first of all, in the workplace, you know, working closely with your colleagues, with your teammates, with your customers, with your suppliers. You know, at the end of the day, we are social creatures by nature. We are there we're wired for connection. And so when it came to the workplace, you know, being forced to go into lockdown, usually when it comes to change, we have the choice and the option. We buy into change, but we had no choice. One day life was normal, the next day we were in lockdown, and that was taken away from us. So we've dealt with a lot of loss. So from a workplace point of view, loss of identity. That simple act of getting up and going somewhere every day that gave us a sense of purpose and a sense of identity and human connection and interaction and socialization in the workplace. And also, you know, the goals that we were chasing, career goals and other such things, and experiencing that culture in the workplace. So we lost a lot of that. And a lot of people, especially if you want to talk about profile types now, and I don't like labeling people, but at a very simple level, if you're talking introverts and extroverts, you know, extroverts struggled with having to now work from home, especially if you live alone and on your own and you don't have anybody around you from a connection, interaction perspective. A lot of people struggled. we also struggled to kind of find a routine without that structure that we had in place of getting up and going to the office. And then from a personal point of view, you know, as you mentioned earlier, those relationships that were already rocky to begin with, well, it just kind of cracked those wide open and put the spotlight on in terms of glaring sort of red flags. And then those of even of the strongest relationships were tested, especially where you have children and you had to now homeschool and you had to juggle and work around each other and manage the home work life responsibilities and being in lockdown. And at a basic level, our freedom was taken away from us. Our independence was taken away from us. Our social and our support circles and structures were taken away from us. So we've definitely been impacted on a lot of levels when it comes to relationships.
Well, you know, it's quite scary because I know some people and I had some moments where I was like, you know, this is actually not too bad. I actually quite enjoy this sort of social isolation. I don't really have to talk to people all the time, and maybe it speaks more to my introverted self, where I kind of go, you know, I could carry on like this. This is not too bad. And, you know, as long as you kind of get to see sort of those nearest and dearest to you and some very close friends, you know, the rest of the time, you know, a lot of the conversations and the people you have to meet, you kind of meet because you have to meet them or you have to talk to them. So if I don't have to do that, and I know that it sounds very unhealthy.
Well, it can be, you know, because the risk with that is you just become more and more reclusive, and you become more and more in your own routine, in your own bubble, in your own space. And over time, you can start losing some of those social skills and the ability to interact and engage with each other. And that's one of the things this year, or towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, as peak companies are now opening up and people are going back into the workplace, and whether it's a full-on in the workplace or whether it's hybrid working models, whatever it is, it's how do you reintegrate people back into public spaces?
Well, enough about me. Let me hand you over to Catherine in a second. And if you're watching, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a comment. If you've got any questions, if you want to be part of the conversation, please feel free. We all know each other here on the internet, and you can drop us a line. If you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to subscribe as well. And yeah, Catherine, I know you got tons of questions, so let me shut up for a minute.
No, I think dating in my age group is so complicated, especially when it comes to, you know, social media and dating apps. I don't know. I find dating nowadays so difficult. I'm 23 and oh my gosh, it's tough. And I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like my friends and I are constantly just being disappointed by men in general. And I think, you know, it's such a fine line between, you know how they say play hard to get, but then you play too hard to get, and then they're not interested. So I want your opinion on, you know, how to, in the beginning when you're dating somebody or, you know, seeing somebody, how do you keep it a fine line between playing hard to get, but also showing them that you're interested, if I can say that. I hope that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And so communication is key, and there's nothing wrong with being honest about what your boundaries are and putting those boundaries down, but at the same time communicating in terms of letting that person know what you're enjoying about the way that they're engaging with you, the way that they're interacting with you, so that they know that, you know, you are interested. You're just choosing to take things slow. You want to be sure before you jump into it. You want to make sure that this is a person that potentially, and there's potential here that you want to look at pursuing before jumping in with both feet. And so then communication is definitely key, and that two-way feedback around, well, I'm enjoying that you're, you know, being so manly about taking initiative and booking a restaurant for us, or wanting to try this and experience something new and something different. And then also from an individual point of view, it's very important to, first of all, before you go into the dating game, is being very clear upfront about what you are looking for in a potential partner. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, how will you recognize it when it arrives on your doorstep?
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I think speaking about it in the beginning just makes it so much easier later on, you know? It's definitely easier said than done. It's you also don't want to, I think, you know, if I go on date with somebody, I don't want to come across too strong by being like, you know, this is what I'm looking for. I want someone, a partner. It's difficult. It's a fine line.
Like Catherine, you've got a brochure that you bring out. has all your photos and your qualifications and testimonials.
My CV, imagine. No, I know, literally. But I think 23 is a good age to still be single. But I think sometimes it's nice to have a partner. Hey, Alex, what do you think?
Here we go. Here I come with my relationship advice.
I'm throwing it back to you.
My ancient wisdom. I've even got a beard where I can stroke my beard and think, listen, I mean, you know what? The person you are when you start your 20s and the person that you are when you end your 30s or begin your 30s, totally different person. I mean, I think there's some psychological study. Paula, please rip me aside if I get this completely wrong. But I think when I did psychology at varsity, one of the things we learned is probably the only thing I vaguely remember from varsity is that by 25, your brain has fully developed to associate decisions with repercussions. I think up until that point, you don't make that cognitive connection. So that's why when you leave school, varsity up until 25, you do stuff and you think, that was so dumb. Like, why did I do that? Like, how did I get myself into this situation? Have I got that right, Paula? Is that sort of biologically, technically somewhat right?
Yeah, around age 24, and obviously everybody's different, but the average is around 24 when your brain is then fully developed. So, leading up to that, you still have a lot of plasticity or neuroplasticity in terms of your neurons, and that are still busy wiring and firing and that kind of thing. But it's also about learning about yourself, testing the limits or pushing the boundaries and things that you like, things that you don't like. You're still trying to figure out your identity and who you are, let alone, am I ready to be in a serious long-term relationship? And also depends on your upbringing and the sort of grounding that you've had from your parental figures in your life, your primary caregivers, because we base a lot of our relationship blueprint on our primary caregivers. So in most cases, mother and father. That's the first relationship that we learn about as to what is a relationship, based on how our parents interact with each other and how we interact with our parents. That's where we learn about love and relationships and how to deal with conflict and vulnerability and emotions and affection and attention and all of those things. And we carry that with us into our adult relationships.
I mean, a bit of pop culture, psychology from my side as well. I mean, another piece of advice is don't look for 100%. You'll never get 100%. No. Absolutely not. If you can get 80%, grab it with both hands. And if you can live with the 20%, I don't know what the 20% is, it varies. It's manageable. But don't go out there because I think also the other issue, Paul, I think Catherine mentions, her age group. I mean, at 23, if I think back to when I was 23, 22, whatever, I mean, you didn't even have access to. I think I saw a 3310 or something. I don't even know what it was, a Nokia black and white screen. I mean, there was none of this stuff like these apps, and I mean, you were not as connected as you were like you are now. And I mean, to some extent, what's quite profound is that it's never been easier to meet people, yet it's never been harder to really meet people, right?
That's so interesting.
Yeah, we've never before we've been in such a connected world through devices and platforms, yet so disconnected from self, but also from others. And you're absolutely right. News flash, breaking news. There is no such thing as the perfect person or the perfect relationship. It's how perfect can you be for each other.
Yeah. Listen, I think there's a lot that needs to happen. I think before I think you make any sort of serious commitments, and I think your 20s is probably a good space to explore safely, if I can say that. I think don't really jump into too many hardcore things, but yeah, I mean, I think this is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother evening. I think we could probably spend the next 3 hours talking about hot relationship advice and what to do and what not to do. But Paul, I wanted to ask you something as well. Is that I found this to be the great reset when it comes to relationships across the board. Because I think so many people looked at this time and went, I know who cares for me. I know who doesn't care for me. I've evaluated what matters. I thought, being the guy who buys all the drinks at the club, I'm in, I've got hundreds of friends. Now, where are all those hundreds of friends? No one's buying drinks for me. I'm broke because I spent all my money buying drinks at the club. I mean, suddenly there must have been this insane shift in the way people now think, actually, maybe I don't need so many friends. Maybe I need different friends. Maybe the friends I had weren't great. Maybe the friends I did have were fantastic because, I don't know, they brought me food or whatever it is that they did. I mean, have you seen a lot of that happening in your profession?
We've definitely taken stock of life and looked at the value and meaning of life and what life looks like for us and the life we aspire to. And we've definitely done a lot of introspection and reflection on what is meaningful and important to us, and relationships being one of those, and relationships across the board. So friendships as well as our personal, our intimate relationships. And at the same time, choosing to let go of what no longer serves us and to look for the things that do serve us in terms of the quality of life that we now aspire to, because we've had a taste for it. We've seen that we can work from anywhere, that there is flexibility, that we can have work-life, well, everybody calls it work-life balance, but it's a complete myth. It's work-life integration. How do you make life work for you in terms of, your lifestyle and your family structure and those kind of things? So, and we've also started redefining what does success look like for us at a relationship level, at a partner level, at a family structure level, and at a career level too. So all of those things, we've done a lot of culling on so many levels and a lot of hitting the reset button.
It's interesting some of the points you raised there, and I think it was a statistic I heard in the news. What was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, where something like 4 million Americans are quitting their jobs every month, and stuff that's coming up is exactly that. I need to prioritize my kids. I've realized working 12 hours a day is absolute rubbish. And I mean, it comes to that whole work-life balance conversation. Catherine, here's another tidbit for you going into the world. If anyone says to you there's work-life balance, anyone who's written work-life balance books has retired as a millionaire. To get to that million, they had to work 24 hours a day. They had to sacrifice weddings, funerals, divorces, birthday parties, work through the night. They made their money, they retired, and now they're writing a book on how to work-life balance. It's easy. When you've got a couple of $1 million in the bank, it's easy to have a work-life balance. But until you get there, it's hard slog work. Like, put in the hours, do your work, get it done. So anyway, that's the work-life balance. But to come back to the point you were making, I mean, it feels like a lot of people now need to almost restart building relationships. And Catherine was talking about the dating game as well, and it's touched on that as well. But now getting back into dating, getting back into having relationships, even if it's a braai on a Saturday afternoon with people you thought you knew or didn't know or went to varsity with or whatever. Like, what are some of the fundamental basics, or what are some of the things that people should be worried about or thinking about or looking at when they start going back into the world, trying to sort of connect with other humans?
Well, let's start with the most controversial one, first of all, and this is not open for discussion because it's a very touchy subject, but it is something that is coming up for a lot of people, and that is, vaxxing versus anti-vaxxing, and who you choose to hang around with or associate with, depending on where you stand on the spectrum. And obviously, from an employment perspective, a lot of employers are mandating that. So from a dating point of view, choosing whether you want to date someone that is or isn't vaccinated at a very simple level, it can be a major deal breaker for some people. So there's that issue to contend with. There's, people have also had time to think about, what do I really want? What am I really looking for in a relationship and a partner? And how is that person adding value to my life? But also, what am I bringing to the table? And I'm not just talking financial here. I'm talking about what are the qualities and the traits that I'm bringing to the table that is going to add value to this person's life and to our relationship, and vice versa. People are being a lot more picky about what they want and what they're doing with their time and their energy and their attention and their resources. And then the kind of lifestyle that you want to live, as you mentioned, it's now been coined the great resignation. A lot of people have realized they've got choices here. And from a career point of view, well, if my employer isn't going to give me the flexibility that I've now realized I want and can have in my life, I'm going to resign and I'm going to go and find another company that is going to give me that and how it's going to meet my needs. And mental health is a very big thing, and it's also very topical at the moment. But a lot of people are being more outspoken about their mental health challenges that they've experienced, and that it's no longer a shame, and removing the stigma associated with that. Sadly, on the negative side of that, and we have seen the stats spike globally, unfortunately, is gender-based violence and sexual harassment. With employees working from home, some employers have realized or are realizing that some employees are not safe working from home. And we've also seen, with the home being the workplace and online being the workspace, that sexual harassment has moved from in the office to online as well.
Sure. All right. I don't know what to say to that. I mean, that is just so loaded with so many landmines across the board. I mean, from starting with, Catherine, now you're going to have to be asking people to fill out forms before you meet with them. Are you vaccinated?
God.
What's your star sign? Are you financially stable? Otherwise, we're not even having a coffee. I mean, and it's, we laugh and we joke, but I mean, it's true. I mean, it's quite a consideration to have. I mean, it's a whole nother level of things that we have to think about. And then, like you said, like this issue with people now being locked up at home. I mean, I think there's just so many nasties that have come out of the woodworks as a result of this. And to some extent, it's good that we are becoming so aware of it, and that it's sort of almost highlighted, the issues, or sort of amplified them so we can do something about it. But at the same time, it's almost like something you think, geez, are we really still dealing with this kind of stuff in 2022? With all the knowledge we've got, all the systems we have. I mean, we're busy sending people to space, and we want to go to Mars, and here we are still dealing with, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it really is just sort of, unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, as you say, after all these years and these decades of dealing with this stuff, and we've made very little progress on one hand. On the other hand, we have made progress in some recent changes to legislation where GBV is concerned. But, Kevin, coming back to your dating and how do I go back into the dating world now, it's, you've got to be very clear on what it is that you do want and what it is that you don't want. And it's often easier to start with what I don't want, to narrow it down and kind of get an idea of what I do want, and to have realistic expectations. As you said earlier, Alex, that no one person is ever going to meet your needs 100% of the time, all of the time. It's unrealistic to expect that. And if you do, you're setting the person up for failure before the relationship has even started. So it's understanding, what does a healthy relationship look like, and a happy relationship. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to fight and you're going to be in love forever, and you're going to be joined at the hip and do everything together. Like, that's unrealistic. A healthy relationship is where you retain your individuality as individuals, and allow each other to be your own person and to have your own space every now and again. But then you come together with intentionality to co-create the us, we, ours, which is where your relationship lives. And being very clear on those boundaries that protect your relationship and protect each other, and what behavior you will and won't tolerate, or what is or is not acceptable. And understanding that as you grow and evolve through your relationship, you also grow and evolve as individuals. So the person you were a year ago, or 10 years ago, you're no longer that person now. So you've got to keep reconnecting and integrating with each other, so that you continue to grow together, as opposed to what often happens is couples end up growing apart and become disconnected.
I want to know what's your opinion on when you were dating in the beginning, and it's kind of like a talking stage. You've been on a few dates. What do you feel about speaking on WhatsApp every single day, as opposed to taking breaks and not speaking every day?
Or not talking on WhatsApp at all, maybe just picking up the phone.
Or that.
Yeah, cool.
Because I've kind of got into the point where I rely on WhatsApp and someone to reply to me all the time, which is not actually that normal, I've realized. And I think a lot of my friends and I get disappointed when someone doesn't reply for a day or whatever. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah. I think it's first of all managing your own expectations. And we live in a world of instant gratification, and we want something and we want it now. So when we send someone a voice note or a WhatsApp, we're expecting them to reply straight away. And when they don't, then we go, oh, maybe they're not interested. Maybe they don't like, maybe that, and we overanalyze stuff, and we listen to those voices in our heads instead of going, well, maybe the person's busy. Maybe they're sleeping. Maybe they're in the shower. Maybe whatever, So to try and not be overly sensitive and take it personally within reason, if the person hasn't responded after 2 days, like, well, okay, then fair enough. But also I would say as part of that communication, like, how do you prefer to communicate? Some people hate WhatsApps and voice notes. Like, pick up the phone and phone me. I want to engage with you. I want to speak to you.
Yes. That's so
Catherine, you should have been here after the Rinderpest. Here we were with our typewriters, having to type up letters and put them in envelopes and put a seal on it. And then some guy on horseback had to ride across the mountains and bring your dear loved one your message of heartfelt. And then they had to respond. Alex, it would take like 2 weeks later. You get a response.
Part of me thinks I would prefer that, because now it's like when someone's got the message because there's a double tick. Whereas that it could have got lost in the post.
The messenger could have been eaten by a lion somewhere, between Graaff-Reinet and and Grabecha. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's so funny. Why I reference this is because I've just spent some time in the Eastern Cape, and I'm just absolutely loving the history that I've discovered in this area. And I thought, what a horrible time to have to be alive back then, when you didn't have flushing toilets, running water, no electricity. I mean, you had to cross over these mountains by ox wagon. And I mean, it was just, you didn't know if you were going to live till 40 because you might get shot at one of these frontier wars, or you might get eaten by something. I mean, we live in such a spectacular time in terms of technology, in terms of access to information. And yet it feels like a lot of the problems still seem to be the same, if not worse. Paul, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but...
Yeah, we definitely expect things, and we want it now. We don't want to wait. And that's the thing about dating, is it takes time to get to know somebody, to really know somebody, not just, we're putting our best foot forward because we want to impress and we want to win this person over and we want them to like us and want to be with us, because at the end of the day, nobody likes to be rejected, right? And we take it as rejection. If we just looked at it and be honest with each other and go, you know what, I'm not feeling it. Like, I'd rather, let's be honest and let's move on and allow you to meet someone else and bring that person into your space, and vice versa, than dragging it out and dragging each other down the garden path. And then you just end up getting hurt even more down the line.
Yeah, communication's key, 100%.
But sort of proper communication, not just sort of, I suppose, sending emojis or blue ticks or whatever. I mean, like you say, you don't know where you stand, you don't know what's going on. Like, what does this clover leaf and the smiley face mean? What am I doing? It must be a nightmare.
I like just to know what's going on. Like, I'd rather someone tell me that they don't think it's going to work out than just not say anything, or like just not reply for a few days, kind of thing. It's all about just being honest. I think that's the most important thing. And in friendships and any type of relationship, just saying, knowing where you stand.
I'm starting to feel like there's some sort of whole new concept going here. We could have like the love doctor on like a Monday night, and
oh my gosh,
people could like message in and be like, I'm struggling with this WhatsApp. What should I do? How should I respond?
Yes,
I don't know.
And anonymous like messages. I think it's a great idea.
Paula, I think we've got something going here.
All of my friends and I have these problems that we could probably speak about for centuries.
Yeah, we'll be busy for years. I mean, Paula and I will be sort of well and gone before we can answer all these questions.
Exactly.
Of 20-somethings. But Paula, I mean, I see time runneth incredibly quicketh. In closing, I mean, what are some of the things that you've got on your dashboard when it comes to relationships going into 2022? Advice, things to watch out for, trends, anything that we should bear in mind?
Well, we've definitely taken a more conscious approach to knowing ourselves and what we want, and that it's around quality relationships versus situationships. And we are definitely making more choices that are right for us and work for us and what we want. And at the same time, we've reassessed what success looks like for us, and based on that, we are making different choices in life. We've become a lot more conscious and aware of what's valuable versus what we deem important. So, for example, material stuff, the house we live in, the car we drive. We've realized quality of life and quality people in our life is of value, and that it's okay to put your hand up and say, I'm not okay, and to ask for help, whether it's talking to a trusted friend or whether it's taking, one step further and talking to a professional and getting help. And that you don't have to rush into a relationship. You can take your time, and that's okay as well. And I think also around a lot of people are craving human connection and are tired of the virtual world. They're tired of the online world. They want to now start meeting in person again. So how do you take your own safety and well-being into account based on, where you stand, whether it's vax, anti-vax, but also just from a physical distancing perspective? And a lot of people are now agreeing to meet up outdoors as opposed to going to, romantic dinners at a restaurant. Well, let's go grab a coffee and a walk in the park, as an example, because it's outdoors and it's deemed a lot more safer, and it's out in nature and, out in the beauty, because we've been cooped up inside for so long. So dates are changing. The way people spend time together are changing. And yeah, there are a lot more people online on online dating apps, but at the same time, people are taking longer to get into a relationship. They're taking their time to get to know a person and have had to be quite creative with online dating. So things like watching a movie together and then commenting or sharing your thoughts about the movie, or cooking dinner and then sharing and eating your meals together while online. So dating has definitely taken on a different trend and much more creativity on both sides.
Oh, wow. Oy vey. Paula Quinsee, thank you so much. A relationship expert. I appreciate you making the time to chat to Catherine and I about relationships, both romantic and non-romantic. And I think we could have another fat conversation about this. So I think we need to have you back again in the coming weeks and months to chat a little bit more. And maybe we'll even pick up on that conversation about getting some of your friends to share some of their ideas, and we could have a bit of a what would you call it? The love solution sort of evening, where we try and find solutions for lonely hearts or broken hearts or yearning hearts, however we want to call it. So yeah, Paula Quinsee, thank you so much for joining us, and very, very nice Gustav Klimt in the background there as well.
Thank you.
I also noticed it.
I'm going to release you from our studio. There we go. Catherine, that's it for our first episode for 2022. I thought that was really interesting.
I thought it was great. I think we could do this a lot more often with Paula, or someone to help. I think it's great. I think a lot of people have these problems, and it's so normal, and just having someone that's professional to give their advice is always great.
Yeah, man. And
I think I tend to give my friends, emotional advice because I love them and I don't want them to get hurt. So I think it's a lot better to get someone that's professional.
Or an outside perspective, somebody who's not necessarily going to, to give you too sanitized advice because they're scared, you're not going to go for coffee with them again, or they're not going to see you ever again. So yeah, but Catherine, awesome to catch up with you again. We're doing this again next week, and if you're listening, thank you so much for making the time to watch this live, to watch it delayed, to listen to it delayed. Always fantastic. Please do reach out on editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect with the Sandton Times on social media @Sandton Times. Visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za and go watch that first vlog I put up. Man, it was a lot of work, hey? I mean, it's everything you've ever wanted. Cinematic shots, drone shots, and animals. I mean, the whole lot. I mean, what more do you want? And it doesn't going to cost you a cent. Go watch it and give it a thumbs up or a comment.
I'm going to watch it right now.
Do right now. And then get every prospective boyfriend to watch it as well and be like,
I will force them. And if they don't, then they're not right.
Otherwise, I'm not going to blue tick your WhatsApp.
Exactly.
So thank you to our guests, Paula Quinsee, and also Catherine. Thank you. It was good to hang out with you again. And also our producer, Jean Robertson, in the background. You never get to see Jean or hear from Jean, but she is there. She's with us. I know. I see she was commenting as well.
Oh.
So
Thank
All right,
you, Jean.
Catherine.
Thank you, Alex. Happy
And
Tuesday.
yeah, we're doing it again next week, Tuesday. Thank you for listening, and let's connect again next week. Ciao for now.
Sounds good. Bye.